Hello, this is the Coach and Benway podcast. I am Coach Red Pill. I am joined by my co-host, Dr. Benway, and today we are going to talk about all things political and legal and FBI and shit show dumpster fire in Washington. Benway, please take it away and tell us the nightmare that is unfolding. Oh, Christ.
It's funny. Any reaction to this objectively should be, this is a nightmare. I'm talking about the internal report that was investigating the FBI's performance or lack thereof around the Russia investigation, the Hillary Clinton email scandal, so on and so forth. I would say that ordinarily this should make you angry, and objectively it should, but at the same time I've been prepared for this outcome or this reading of the situation for a long time. So to me, it's like, oh, it's a confirmation of everything I thought. But for those of you who are interested, this is the 500 plus page internal report that just came out Wednesday or Thursday, I forget. And the big, reveal there was clearly the FBI has internal biases against Trump, leaving a few juicy nuggets along the lines of someone saying to Peter Strzok, the guy who was running the Hillary Clinton investigation, into her emails, and someone pretty high up in the FBI organization, someone goes to him, is Trump really going to win, or something to that effect? He says, no, we'll stop him. Emphasis on the we.
Yeah, the we, okay, so he's investigating Clinton while the election is going on. He's against Trump. So the obvious inference is that he's going to bury any negative information that he gets on Clinton. This is catastrophic. This is obstruction of justice. This is fucking worse than Nixon. I mean, what the fuck?
And what was interesting in the report, though, and this is the unsurprising thing, and this is at least to direct it to Comey, but you get the sense that it's applied more generally, which was try to say, hey, we could not find documented evidence of people saying we're doing X for Y reason. In other words, we're going to avoid these things that will harm Trump. I'm sorry, these things that will harm Clinton, and we'll focus on these things that will harm Trump. But that no one's going to write that down, right? You have to get into the mentality of the people, governing this. So the report will go out of their way to say, even though Comey seems like an idiot at times, we did not find direct evidence that he was, acting inappropriately. But they will say he was acting like an idiot. My favorite reveal, and you and I were laughing at this because it's just so absurd we can't believe it, was that at the time, late in the election, remember when they discovered Hillary Clinton emails on Huma Abedin's computer? Apparently, Comey, drumroll please, did not know that Huma Abedin and Anthony Weiner were married to each other.
Yeah, that's impossible to believe, because this was already, we were on the second Weiner scandal, because do we recall that the first Weiner scandal, which was 2012, I think it was, when he was
something like that, yeah.
When he was caught tweeting, dick pics at some teenage girl, right? That had already blown him out of the water, had blown him out of Congress. I mean, remember, the guy was a congressman. So this shit that Comey, a politically plugged-in guy in Washington, I mean, who probably knew the first names of the wives of every congressman on Capitol Hill. Fuck you, he didn't know that that Anthony Weiner was married to Huma Abedin. They were like a superstar power couple in Washington. Impossible. And how could he float that and expect people to believe him? I can't believe that. It's just the raw arrogance. That's the thing that drives me nuts.
Well, isn't that the interesting strategy, which I've seen happen time and time again, to protect this class of people from real punishment? They get around it by more or less saying, hey, they meant well, but they were incompetent. You got to give them a break.
Yeah,
because that's effectively what was used, for Hillary Clinton. It's like gross negligence as opposed to gross, or I forget the exact. There was a legalese around it, but basically They said she didn't act maliciously with her emails. She just didn't know any better.
Yeah, they keep trying to explain away illegality as incompetence, but it's okay one time, fine. And hey, it's perfectly reasonable. I mean, like, say one time you screw up with your top secret documents. Oh, that's perfectly fine. It happens to anybody. But then a third, a fifth, a 10th time, and it's going on for decades. And it's always the same excuse. They didn't know any better. They meant no harm. Give me a get out of jail free card. What the fuck? I mean, they have to nail these fucking people to the wall. I mean, somebody. And the other thing that's come up now is that the new district attorney of Manhattan, Manhattan or New York or whatever, is
Southern District.
the
Probably.
Southern District, right, is going after Trump and the Trump family, specifically all the kids, because of the Trump Foundation. Well, you know what the Trump Foundation is, basically. It's basically the piggy bank for the small change shit, you know? And they're going after them, you know? It's just political vendettas by way of the Justice Department. And at the same time, clear obstruction of justice. It's just a fucking nightmare. I don't know if it's always been like this, and I'm the naive one, or what, or if it's gotten worse as of late.
You know, it's hard to tell to a certain extent, because I can concoct a story for you both ways that are reasonable, right? I can believe in a world where this FBI that we've had, with a legacy going back to J. Edgar Hoover, especially, the bigger it gets, is loaded with its own, petty squabbles and, bureaucratic vendettas and things like that, to where, like, you get these it's just big enough to allow petty bickerings to, manifest itself as policy.
Right.
But I also believe, because we've also talked about this, that a class of people who have, sat fairly comfortably in this type of work for a very long time, have gotten complacent to the point where any questioning of their performance or anything that really shakes the boat is going to, one, drive them crazy, and two, drive them to actions that are like above and beyond, just acceptable. Like I said, there's a certain acceptable level of corruption. There's like, hey, it's just the nature of business, how things get done. But then there's the organized sort of, whether, it's top down or just, we have a collective delusion, in this case, that Trump is the next coming of Hitler, and we're going to operate accordingly. That I think is happening. Yeah. So I could believe either one.
Well, I don't know. I mean, the other people who are going out. I'm sorry, I overran you. I just wanted to say the other people who are going crazy is the media, the mainstream media. Rachel Maddow now is just saying that the whole Trump Kim Jong-un meeting was, to give Putin something. It's like Putin controls everything. He's like the master puppeteer. It feels like I'm in a fucking Ed Wood movie. Pull the strings. I mean, it's fucking nuts.
Well, it's funny because she does look like Ed Wood without the Angora sweater. Poor Rachel Maddow. When she was a young girl, she was like a nice blonde-haired kid, with like hopes and dreams, and then just got hit by the bulldyke tree for a while. But needless to say, yeah, she's crazy. But hasn't she been crazy for a while? I mean, let's be candid. I mean, that's her gimmick. But I know she's been particularly crazy with the Donald. I get it. He lends himself to that. But she also lends herself to this side of the cuckoo clock.
They're going particularly nuts as of late. It's going beyond the rationality. It's beyond the rational, beyond the normal. Okay, I mean, yesterday, I think it was yesterday that I saw this video of Rachel Maddow going on and on and on about the fucking 11-mile border that North Korea shares with Russia, which is true. Which, by the way, it's the middle of fucking nowhere. There is nothing there. It's the fucking far eastern tundra of Russia. I think it's not the easternmost point of Russia geographically, but I mean, it's just fucking far. It's the northeast corner of North Korea. There is nothing. They showed shots of it. It's just like a swampland tundra kind of thing with just like weeds and nothing, right? And as if this were like the border between Checkpoint Charlie or some shit like that, right? And she's going on and on and on about how Russia must be involved, and she keeps like sticking it in like it's like a conspiracy. It's insanity. I mean, even people on the left, like the guy, what's his name, Secular Talk, Kyle Kalinske, even he's going, man, these fucking people are going out of their minds. I mean, they're losing their brains.
They come across like they watched Red Dawn a few too many times.
No, yeah, Manchurian Candidate, like the original. Yeah, the original. Yeah, exactly. The original, not the remake. That was shit. It had Meryl Streep in it. Ha ha ha. That should tell you all. Anyway, no.
But here's the other thing about that was going on at the FBI. that I think it probably doesn't get as much attention, but I think just lends credence to what we've been talking about for a long time here, which was the revelation of just the casual, resentment towards Trump and Trump supporters. Like I forgot who said it. It may have been Strzok. It may have been someone else. But it was basically, the line was this: it's like, I went to a Walmart in Southern Virginia, and you could just smell the Trump support, kind of thing.
A hatred of their own people. That's fucking crazy.
Remember, these are the guys charged with protecting you.
Yeah.
You fellow people.
Yeah, and no, the resentment towards their fellow citizens. I mean, you have to understand how disengaged as a class these people have become. They are in their own. It's not the Washington bubble; it's a class bubble, and that's the thing. It may sound extremely Marxist, but I think that's the fundamental problem, that we're having class warfare. It's breaking out into the open, where you have common people and the bien pensant upper classes, and they just view the world completely differently. And the bien pensant upper classes want to get rid of the common people. I mean, expunge them from the country, and bring in more of the brown people that they love so much. I mean, they're fucking crazy. I mean,
to his credit, and I'm surprised he's done this. Like, Tucker Carlson, almost word for word, has said what you just said on air.
Really?
Very public. Yeah, he's basically said, look, the wealthiest, like, of the 10 wealthiest counties in the United States, the majority of them are in the Washington, D.C. area. Most people, he said, he lives with, they only know, the brown people who are their maids and butlers. They have the complete disconnect from society. They want to see it destroyed, frankly. And I admire him for at least recognizing that. I think that, like I've said before, the past 5 years have been an exercise in him reassessing himself as a conservative. And I still say he's even more of a conservative than ever. But ironically enough, he recognizes the degree to which the class manifestation of this really makes the situation worse. And I think you're right. And I think this is another variation on that. I mean, it's what he's been going on for a long time, because the managerial class, and it's funny, we call it the managerial class, but it's really the bureaucratic class, because the bureaucratic class isn't really managing businesses that are producing something. They're managing the organization of society, which almost by definition does not produce nearly anything.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's also, well, you and I have discussed this privately, and I think on the podcast on more than one occasion, is that the issue that financially the United States is a fucking disaster. I mean, the Western democracies are all up shit's creek. You heard about Mario Draghi, finally saying that they're going to cut the ECB's QE, the European Central Bank's quantitative easing program. The quantitative easing program, for those of you who might not know, is where the European Central Bank basically invents money out of thin air and uses it to prop up the price of sovereign debt of the EU countries. And they're going to be ending that. And the euro is weakening substantially because of it. I didn't quite understand, actually, I didn't quite read the issue of what justification Mario Draghi had for ending QE. Do you know?
No, I don't, unfortunately.
Yeah. So they're ending that program. Well, in the United States, the banking system should have been allowed to collapse in 2008. But for the sake of saving the system, which it's interesting because they confuse the participants in the system with the system. They don't seem to understand that the participants in the system are just the planks on the ship of Theseus that can be replaced, right? It's the system itself that has to be saved, but rather than doing that, they save the principles. And so in 2008, and so we have a financial system that is a fucking disaster. The central bank is basically creating ad hoc policy in order to prop up the stock market. I mean, what is their rationale, by the way? Okay, I'm ranting randomly.
Well, I think because here's the thing. I wouldn't be surprised if it's related to the fact that I think there's been rumors that the United States Fed Reserve was going to manage down the money supply as well, because for a long time we've had the cheap money, which has run everything, and people said, okay, it's kind of time to, boost up kind of like the interest returns a little bit on this thing. I think that's what people have been waiting for. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Europeans say, well, we probably should do the same thing, because we should follow suit with the US to some degree to maintain the expected exchange ratios that we would like.
Yeah, I think that, okay. The reason I'm ranting all over the place is because of this. It seems to me that the leadership class in the United States and the other Western democracies have completely lost sight of what they are supposed to be doing. And I think that Benway, you and I see eye to eye on this issue, and we are equally upset because, to a very real extent, we were both raised to be participants in that managerial class, in that top 20%, that top 10% that manages the whole system. We were educated to be that. Our educational background and the little social curlicues that we were taught were also that we would function smoothly in that leadership managerial class. And we were taught, at least I was taught, that leadership managerial class were exceptional individuals. But, look at them now and you see that they're fucking incompetent buffoons who don't know what the fuck they're doing, and they don't have any kind of a long-term vision, and they hate the people that they are supposed to serve. There is no sense of noblesse oblige. There is a sense of I don't know French, so I wanted to say the nobility hating the common people. It's let them eat McDonald's. You know what I mean? Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, well, here's the thing about that, and you may hate me for referencing this new Hollywood film that you did not like, but I'll do it. I've long thought that to reference Heaven's Gate, the movie Heaven's Gate. So what is the beginning of Heaven's Gate? You have the Harvard graduating class. The commencement speech is the Reverend professor saying, it is your job to be the contact of the cultivated mind with the uncultivated mind, to bring, intelligence and enlightenment to the people as a whole and enrich the society as a result. The only person in that whole group that whole class that even comes close to doing that is our Chris Christopherson character, who's defending, a bunch of people protecting their land, and the whole apparatus of the society in which he was born and is living their goal is we're going to just fucking kill them all.
Yeah.
That's the version of the world we're kind of living in right now. We're the closest things, and we're not. I would say I'm not doing a very good job at it of being, the guy just hanging out with your average folks, your average people. I would say Tucker Carlson is that way as well. Our goal is we have a society in which we are a part of, and we're responding in a way to help the sum totality of it, as opposed to a managerial class who's more interested in their own world preserving itself. And if they've got to bump off, or shall we say marginalize many of their fellow Americans to do it, who just don't happen to have gone to the same schools or clubs or what have you, so be it. That's the world we live in. That's why I think when people say we're in the flaming end of the second Gilded Age, I think they're right.
Yeah, it's well, I think it's more spectacular than the first Gilded Age, and I can't see how it ends. Because the Gilded Age, the first one, ended with the Trustbusters, Teddy Roosevelt, that whole crowd, and Upton Sinclair and all those writers. How is this going to end?
That's a good question that I don't have an answer to. In theory, the idealist would say, well, whatever political movement Trump's type supporters represent should be the foundation of the next muckrakers. And to a certain extent, some guys kind of do that in a limited way. I think on occasion Cernovich does that, as a few others, not in a very big, dramatic kind of Upton Sinclair's like, we're going to redo the meatpacking industry kind of way, but certainly you have like big enough.
Yeah, you have Luke Rutkowski over at wearechange.org. You've got Lauren Southern and Brittany Pettibone. Lauren Southern in particular, she's earning huge points with the work she's doing in South Africa. And I think that kind of point of view and perspective is she's going to start to bring that to America. I wouldn't be surprised. I think that that's the natural evolution for her progression as a journalist. Because you have to say that she is becoming a real journalist. She's no longer, just a pretty face, making fun of SJWs. She's going out there and getting the news and getting information. And I respect her enormously. And I think that there are other people like that who are going out there and getting the real news. They are going, they're going to the people to find out what's going on and bringing back that news and trying to bring attention to it. But other than them, the people who were raised to be this thing, the people who went to the good journalism schools, the people who went to the Ivy Leagues, the Columbia Journalism School, wound up in the New York Times or the Washington Post, they are morons. They are morons. I mean, and they say stuff like, oh, all this criticism, we should have like some people in authority to silence the criticism. They're basically advocating totalitarianism. I mean, they don't even realize it. Huh?
Yeah, well, the other thing that just happened recently when I was watching a news report on the IG report when it came out, and they're like, I think it was even Fox News, so it wasn't necessarily a harmful or a negative reading of it relative to the president, but she's like, let me go through the TikTok on this, and she's reading all these details, and I'm like, even I got lost. I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you bringing up this detail, not that detail? They're acting like they're supposed to make a nice summary for you. And all they did was bury the lead and add too many unnecessary details and added a lot more confusion than was needed. And I'm like, this is basic how-to for your job, right? And you can't even do this.
Yeah.
What the fuck are we going to do? I'm like, I can read the goddamn report at this point. I don't need your summary. I'll get it from elsewhere. And that's, I think, the state of how bad it is, right? Yeah. I mean, and it's not surprising, especially in a business setting that I'm in, when I see certain people of my generation or a little older or a little younger, make decisions and do things that I'm like, oh, well, why are you doing that way, or why are you not doing this fundamental stuff that just doesn't seem to be part of the day-to-day operational procedure. And I'm like, oh God, if that's the state we're in, we're kind of screwed. And that leads me back again to that excuse that when people had, it's like, well, if we, if there's a fuck up, it's not because they're nefarious, it's because they're incompetent or they have a certain level of stupidity. It's like, well, if that's true on some level, it's no better. We're still just as fucked because the net outcome is the same.
Well, I think also it falls back to the educational system. You have to understand the people who are running things now, they are the first full SJW generation. I'm talking about the people who are around the age 40, okay? The people aged 40 are the people who were going into college in the year 2000, right? 1998, 2000, right? And that crowd, they got a big fat dose of SJW rhetoric, and it skewed their priorities. And I think that if you start looking at what they're doing, like on a corporate level, for example, at Disney, for example, insofar as Marvel Comics, the comic books, not the movies, insofar as the Star Wars movies, there is this whole SJW notion that it's like the obvious way for them to react and to position what they're doing. It's second nature. It's the way things ought to be. And they don't see what they're doing wrong, because they've been so taught this that it's so ingrained that they can't see the world in any other way. You see what I'm saying? I think it has to do with the education.
So I'll give you a concrete example.
Yeah, I mean, do you agree with that? Do you agree?
I do, and I'll give you a concrete example of how I think the way you respond to this affects your personality. I went to university. First year was in 2004. And I remember very clearly that first orientation week when they were going through the various types of sensitivity training, when as soon as they start going into the sex and race and all of that thing and telling you these basic SJW line of how to deal with people, I can remember exactly what I felt, which was I feel more alienated from people now than I did before. When I didn't think about it, in high school, which it was mostly white, but there were black kids and Hispanic kids. I didn't really think about it. It really wasn't a concern. And this topic didn't even really enter my mind in any material way. Now that they have it, I'm just like, I kind of am uncomfortable being around all of you because I think you're all in a fucking cult with the Kool-Aid. And that permeated through me, but I was kind of a weirdo in school. And it was the University of Chicago, which was fairly light on this stuff compared to other universities. Yeah. So imagine, accelerate, 10, 15 years later, here am I, the outsider, saying you guys are all ridiculous, but I'm seeing people in charge who just sniffed that Kool-Aid, who just accepted the indoctrination as is, and they probably were getting it even earlier if they went to places like California or New York. I mean, that shit was almost like mother's milk to them.
Exactly.
So I completely believe that this is the rot from that initial wellspring just blooming.
Yeah, and so what happens is that, see, okay, you get rid of the current leadership, but then the next crop of leadership is going to have the same fucking problem, the same skewed priorities. You have businesses that are not concerned about profitability. They are concerned about extraneous social issues that they have no business sticking their nose in. That is not healthy. That is not how you run a business. I'm thinking of Disney. Disney's business. What is Disney's business? Its business is to license its names and intellectual properties to toy manufacturers so as to sell the maximum number of toys. That's its business. Okay? Star Wars is a giant ad for Star Wars toys, Star Wars bed sheets, Star Wars everything. That's its business. That has always been its business. That's how the studio prevented itself from going broke. Because Disney was perennially on the edge of going broke until that fella, his name always slips my mind, got the idea, and proposed it of licensing Mickey Mouse, and the Mickey Mouse watch saved Disney. Were it not for the Mickey Mouse watch and the licensing deal of the Mickey Mouse watch, Disney would have been an ancient memory, like RKO Pictures or something. It wouldn't be the behemoth it is today. But the people, the business is toys. And they have to make toys that appeal to children. So you have to know your fucking market. But these people know, they insist on imposing a vision, a social vision on Star Wars that is incompatible with basic biological reality. Because I have children, small children. My daughter, she's 5. And for her, there are only 2.5 colors. There's pink and fuchsia and sometimes blue. But pink and fuchsia, or fuchsia and pink, depending on her mood, those are the only 2 colors. We didn't teach her this. It's not that we, said to her, oh, you have to love fuchsia and pink. No. All by herself, those are her colors. And my 3-year-old son, he's blue, and he's all about cars and dump trucks and cement trucks. That's his thing, This is basic human nature. You cannot change it. The stuff I'm telling you about my kids right here, I'm telling you to emphasize the fact that is the way people are. There is a built-in human nature, but this SJW social experimentation insists on changing it and using businesses to change it in ways that can cripple the business, and that creates social problems, but also in a way that cripples people because it forces everybody to act in ways and to want things that we don't really want. You see what I mean? It's driving us nuts. Mm-hmm.
So I think because we've mentioned this, before, and I think I'll phrase it this way, which I don't think is a way I've phrased it ever before, which is to say, everybody thinks that, or at least the people who operate under this way, the social engineering aspect of SJWism, what have you, they are still operating under the fundamental axiomatic belief that their goals or their plan for the future is sound.
Right.
And, all of these things that we're doing, it's like long term, it's just going to be better. So if we take short term hits, it's worth it. Right. I think what we're trying to articulate here and what more and more people are realizing is that even the long term goals are just absurd. They would never work out, nor would they ever be desirable. Yeah. But the problem is that people still think that those are going to work somehow. So any short term problem is not a manifestation of a long-term problem in their mind. It's that, it's a manifestation of short-term bigotry that we're trying to resolve. And once it's resolved, hey, don't worry about all of the financials and whatever. It's, things will keep going. That, I think, is the situation we're at now, where we have to strongly articulate that, hey, the long-term vision that you have is just not going to work out either. And I think they have, but, per usual, people who invest many years toward a long-term goal have prior commitment syndrome. They are not going to change their mind.
Yeah.
Right.
Sunk cost.
There's your question. Yeah, exactly. It's sunk costs. That's exactly right. So, best way, I don't know the best way to change that other than to say, to a certain extent, you just have to get new people in.
But my argument is that you bring in the new people and they're going to have the same fucking mentality because it's been inculcated in the universities. We're going on to the 3rd generation of university students who think this shit is normal. Shit, I remember back in the early 90s, they were pushing this shit. And here we are. Yeah.
So that's why my favorite example is how to deal with this is you need to replace your aristocratic or leadership class. The best example I have of how this was done previously in Japan during the Meiji Restoration. It wasn't that the imperial family suddenly took over everything and it was just the imperialists who were good. All it meant was that there was a shift from who were the samurai nobles who were running the country. It used to be the samurai nobles who were supporting the shogun, and then the samurai nobles who supported the emperor, took over and were replaced. The same kind of types of people, but the different thinking, different mentalities took over. And from today, or from that point to today, all of the people of successful positions in Japan trace their lineage back to that group. So you have to exchange the group of people somehow. Usually it's a revolutionary act. I think that's kind of where we're at now, unless I can't think of any reformative way out of this. Because to your point, a just reformative way just replaces this current crop with the next crop that were trained on the same or drank the same Kool-Aid. So
you're thinking that that we'd have to go with full-on revolution and find a group of people who could replace the current leadership.
Yeah, and I think the best way to describe it is revolution, because you're changing the people who are in control. Yeah, and not just the people, but the mentality of it. So I don't know that there's another better word for it, but I think revolution is as best as I can come up with.
Yeah, not in the milquetoast Nike commercial kind of revolution. We're talking real revolution, actual revolution.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking at this point. And this always reminds me when people say, "Oh, you see these aristocratic forms of government never work." I'm like, no, it's just that you have the wrong aristocrats. Yeah, because there's always a minority of people making a decision. I'm sorry to tell you.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, like we live in this illusion that we live in a democracy, right? But if the choices that you have to vote on are limited by a particular class of people, then you don't have democracy. You just have the illusion of it. And that's what we've had for several decades now. We have a professional managerial class and a professional political class since Lincoln's time, really. I mean, I can't think of the last time that truly anybody could be president, because they all come from the right. They're all members of the right class. I think that Lincoln and Grant were the last ones who were like,
right, those were the log cabin shit kicker Republicans. I would say so the last, actually, this is a good question. I think the last presidents who came from literally shit kicker backgrounds would have been Johnson and Nixon, because those guys were shit kickers, and Harry Truman were shit kicker guys. They did not come from the good families. This is actually an interesting question. I actually think this is pertinent.
Well, no, because like Clinton, for instance, he was also a shit kicker.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he got plugged in. He got juiced in, and did it with Johnson. Johnson got juiced in, And Nixon, you can argue that Nixon did too. I mean, come on, he had a meteoric rise. I mean, he was the Obama of his time, right? So, there's something to consider there.
That's a good point, but I just have to take his fundamental resentment with the ruling powers that be at face value to a certain extent. Is that even if he got plugged in, that he didn't get plugged in the right way. He just hated his fellow compatriots.
No, he hated the New York crowd. Okay, but he was a California man. The California establishment loved him. I mean, they supported him. They did everything for him, and they adored him. Okay, it was the New York crowd that he was always resentful of. The Kennedy crowd. The Kennedy crowd, not necessarily Democrats, but just that Harvard, Ivy League class. Nixon, he's a tragic figure.
Well, because I think what's interesting about this, and I think it's, again, I think what was revealed in the internal report on the FBI roundabout way reveals it too, which is people who are rough around the edges, but probably very capable and have the vision to do what is needed, will never get through this system anymore, because you just see how it operates. It's funny. This was another detail from the report that made me laugh. People were saying, "Oh, Trump was using the word pussy again, or called someone their names." It's like, he's clearly unfit for office, and the people who are talking are documented as engaging in an extramarital affair.
Yeah, I mean, who gives a shit? Who gives a shit if he uses the word pussy and and whatever other dirty word you can think of. It doesn't matter. What matters is effectiveness. And you're actually, what you say depresses the shit out of me. When you said that it is unlikely that somebody who could actually have the vision to change things for the better will ever be able to achieve power in the current system. That is incredibly depressing, to realize that the system is set up to weed out the capable people. Jesus fucking Christ.
And I think it happens on two fronts, but they're related. One, the act of the system itself. So I remember, ironically enough, when Obama became the candidate and eventually won the senator from Illinois seat. A couple of things happened around his competitors to make that work. So in the Democratic primary, there was the leading candidate was a guy named Blair Hull. Mm-hmm. I think, basically just, Chicago Democratic functionary. I think it was the Chicago Tribune or one of the local newspapers had like some sort of sex scandal or marital scandal on him, and he dropped out. Oh, Obama has no competition. He's the Democratic nominee. He was going up against a candidate in the Republican side. I forget his full name, but it was Ryan, and he was married to Jerry Lee Ryan, the actress who played 7 of 9 on Voyager.
Okay,
and yeah. They had divorced a few years before, and again, right around the height of the election time, Chicago Tribune reveals a report about the scandal of their divorce, and he was not a nice guy in the personal life for whatever reason. He dropped out again and was replaced by a throwaway candidate at the last minute. In other words, assuring Obama would get the seat. So that kind of orchestration of intentional, like, we'll look into your background, anything that's just not perfect, we'll use against you to the point of failure, knocks out a lot of the interesting candidates. Because frankly, people with interesting ideas do crazy shit at time to time, and not stuff that I would say is even relevant, just enough to bother enough people, right? Yeah. And to embarrass you.
Yeah.
It's the nature of how that kind of creative thinking kind of works. Sorry to say, people, it's kind of how you have to deal with. Yeah. As a result of that, the second filter happens, which is people who are creative, who have the temerity to do so, think to themselves, why would I risk this? I don't want to get involved into something that can besmirch me or embarrass me. I'll do something that's kind of acceptable, like I'll be an artist, or I'll be a businessman, or I'll do something that people are kind of just okay with me being myself, and they feel like it's too much of a risk and too little reward to get into politics, and I think that's dangerous.
Yeah, because the best people will just have no interest whatsoever in going to politics, because they know that whatever they did in the past, whatever tiny little thing, it'll come back and bite them in the ass. You have to look at somebody like Obama, that's so spotless over the decades. That speaks of something wrong with the man. Okay?
Yes.
It doesn't speak well of him. Because, I mean, come on, Benway, how many times have you fucked up and done something incredibly stupid, bad, or embarrassing, or what have you? Maybe it was your fault or it happened to you. Ditto with me. But
I was just going to say, every single person who's listening, every single person who's not listening has something embarrassing in the background. It could be something completely legal. It's just like, oh, I wish nobody knew that kind of thing. It's like, oh, I really regret that. It doesn't matter how, it doesn't matter where, it doesn't even matter the subject. Everybody has that, and it's enough for the public to kind of hate you. Like you're on YouTube, you're in a social media. No matter what you say or do, someone's going to hate you.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah,
and that's the thing. They play off that game. There's they'll get enough people to hate you to prevent you from being successful in any regard. Yeah. This is a certain degree of a byproduct of the universal suffrage democratic process. It's like, anybody can now make voting decisions based on things that you would never believe would be a voting decision. Like, does the guy have a limp handshake? Does the guy have are his suits too blue? Did he, did he read Hustler 3 issues too long? What I mean? Kind of thing. That's how we're at, and I think you hit the nail on the head. It's like nobody wants to risk that, and that's a shame.
Yeah, but more to the point though, these spotless candidates.
Yeah, you're right. I think there's one of two things that come to my mind when that happens. Either, to your point, there's just something fundamentally weird about the guy that he never took a risk or never did anything weird, or two, is this guy engineered to a certain extent? I don't necessarily mean like we grew him in a test tube,
although maybe,
kind of, but kind of. The idea that like you from birth through whenever your election is, you are designed to be a candidate who is electable, which means you think certain ways and you don't think certain ways. And that just lends itself perfectly to never harming the status quo.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I told you, I've told you before about the Obamometer, how and at Harvard Law School, the other law students would laugh at Obama because he was always taking the temperature of the room and always giving up a summation, sort of like to be as conciliatory and non-confrontational as possible. And they all found it laughable. And what's interesting is that, see, that group of people who came up with that, they were the cool people. They were the interesting people. They had the interesting ideas. And they came to nothing. The one who has written about this, she's part of a shitty little blog that, well, it's not shitty little blog, but the point is, it has like 1 million or 2 million, monthly viewers. But the point I'm trying to make is, I don't mean to disparage it. It's Naked Capitalism, a great blog, a financial blog. But the point I'm trying to make is that, see, she doesn't have her hands on the levers of power. And she has very interesting ideas that could potentially do a lot of good, or if not do a lot of good, at least, rattle the system enough that it falls into a new gear and starts working up again, But Obamometer won, and he's completely milquetoast. Oh man, the more I think about Obama, the more I despise him,
Oh no, yeah, there's a couple of things about it. One, it's especially what people thought of him, and I don't even think he really manifested this, but people believe somehow that when we use the word consensus in democracy, it means one opinion, which is, offensive to no one and kind of works out. That isn't really what consensus is. A consensus is all of the opinions just kind of shit in the same box, and eventually, you'll get something that just generally works, okay. But what's funny about that is people think that, Obama represented our great ideal, which is we're going to have all voices unified and heard in a kind of tolerant kind of way. It's funny because nowhere outside of politics do we really even expect true democracy like that, nor does it operate that way. Like I guarantee you in a business, business isn't really run democratically.
No, if it's run democratically, it's going to get run into the ground. Simple as that.
Exactly. You have a visionary leader or set of leaders, be they at the CEO level or at least within the functional groups of a business. They derive policy and people work around that. If they start fucking up, hey, the next guy comes in and tries to solve the situation.
Yeah, and a lot of times
this is our fundamental human organization, and we just live with it. Except when it comes to politics like this, we think that, oh no, we have to not
consensus. Fuck consensus. Like I knew one business where the partners kind of hated each other. There were 3 guys basically. And it wasn't quite a triumvirate. I mean, it wasn't that they had equal weight, but it doesn't matter the specifics. Yeah. And also, I don't want to have people being able to figure out who I'm talking about. And the thing is, see, they hated each other, right? But the thing is, I knew them individually, and they all were like, "I fucking hate the other motherfuckers." The other 2 motherfuckers, they would each say, "But we are constantly fighting, but we get to a certain kind of balance that actually is beneficial for the company." Okay. And they were all making so much goddamn money, and they all suspected that they would not be making that much money if they were on their own, that they kept on in this kind of like infernal marriage because they recognized that tension and that constant bickering and fighting and having to like negotiate and say, okay, we'll do it your way this time, but the next time my way, and just like really slugging it out all the fucking time was beneficial to the business. They never had consensus. It was always a 2-to-1 vote. And it was always a 2-to-1 vote, and there was always a lot of bitterness. There was even bitterness over decisions that had been the right one, but the losing party was still pissed off about it, and it had been years before, okay? That is actually healthy. Conflict, chaos, disagreement, that is something good. This thing that we all have to be on the same fucking page, fuck that noise. That's not the way things are. That's not the way a healthy organism is. But that's the culture now. We all have to have a consensus. We all have to agree. Don't we all agree? Please agree, or we'll send you to the re-education camp. Yee.
Well, that's fundamentally what we were. Exactly. That's fundamentally what was revealed in this report and what we've been talking about for a long time, which is to say the true I hate to say this because I feel like I'm saying the Democrats are the real racists, which I think is a shitty argument to make. But the idea is like what you described between that triumvirate was actual tolerance. It's like, hey, it's a 2-to-1 ratio of the vote. I'm pissed off about the results, but you know what? I'll live with it because I think it'll work out fine. But I'm airing my point of view, and we don't get along. That's actually tolerating people for who they are, as opposed to just extracting, lobotomizing all thought on the matter into a unified non-thinking, which I think is kind of the situation we're at, which is why like I said, what made me really laugh in the report was, and why I emphasize that it's non-thinking, is the gut reaction to say Trump uses crude language and he is unfit for office was a discussion had between two people who were having an extramarital affair.
Yeah.
In other words, they don't care really about the morality per se. They care about their in-group being protected.
About the optics. Yeah. Oh, he says pussy, he's evil. He grab him by the pussy, he's an evil bastard. Oh, you're having an affair?
He's probably had this woman's pussy in his hand when he was saying, how dare Trump talk about grabbing woman's pussy. That's kind of like, that's pretty much where we're at. Yeah. That's how I envision it.
Yeah, I know. It's well, look, I was reading this really interesting book. Let me go find it as I'm speaking to you, called The Silk Roads, which is a history of the world from the point of view of the Middle East, and South Asia. Where'd it go? I had it right here. Oh, here it is. Just a second. I highly recommend it. It's by Peter Frankopan, who's like an Oxford professor. This is like his big book. It was a big #1 bestseller, and it's a great book. A New History of the World, and The Silk Roads. The Silk Roads, A New History of the World by Peter Frankopan. Please read it. Anyway, I was reading it, and he was talking about different civilizations and different this and that and the other. And he was talking about one and saying, oh, the bureaucratic class took over and fucked things up, and, it decayed, and the stronger empire rolled around, that they had a more effective military and conquered them, and that was that, right? And, one more civilization collapses and crumbles. One more group of people is overrun by another. It's history, right? Well, the thing is, see, we're living history too. We are, it's not that we're living in this bubble, this ahistorical bubble, and the things of the past do not affect us. Often is not what we're living is, if you get right down to it, a repetition of shit that has happened before in other countries or contexts or continents. The names, I mean, it's that line from that song by Bon Jovi. It's all the same, only the names change. Fucking A. And so we're living in a period of time where this Mandarin class is choking our society, killing it. And the body politic is struggling against this Mandarin class. And the Mandarin class is fighting back. That's what's going on. That's what we are living. And the body politic threw up Donald Trump. And Donald Trump is a smart enough individual that he knows that he's got to deliver for his for the body politic, for the people who elected him. But the Mandarin class just want him dead. And they are willing, and they are more than willing to entertain the notion of a nuclear war in order for him not to win. Because that's the thing that is shocking me the most, that the left, the people in the deep state, quote unquote, the people in the bien pensants and the intelligentsia, they were, I think, Bill Maher basically said that it would be great if there were a crisis, if there was a catastrophe, if there was a war. They want that to happen. I know I sound so like fucking like a baby blue innocent kind of thing, as if I'm so surprised by this, but I am, because I never thought that the managerial class, to repeat, the class to which I was not raised to belong to, but, raised to sort of like emulate and understand that they're like the good guys and they're looking after us, right? I was raised to think that Robert McNamara was a good guy. I always thought that Robert McNamara was a good guy growing up. When I heard about him, that he was, the president of Ford Motor Company, the whiz kids, and he brought professional management to the government and all the rest of it. And then, I find out that the son of a bitch knew in 1965 that the war was unwinnable, and kept grinding it along, And that just showed me that these people are fucking, they want to destroy it, and I'm still shocked by it. I know I sound naive, but I'm still shocked.
Here's the best way to, I think, and a good analogy for that. I think shocked, yes, but I think the reality of the matter is, it's just, you're just seeing it for the reality of what it is, and it's just a very unpleasant reality. It's like as if I think I've referenced the movie, The Ice Storm, and the movie ends with the family having to see the patriarch break down and cry.
Yep.
There's a realization of that moment when you have your structures of authority, or your the people who you think are going to operate in a decent manner, basically reveal that they're flawed humans, or in this case extraordinarily flawed and dangerously flawed. The reveal of this flailing about this report, Rachel Maddow freaking out about this desolate border between Russia and North Korea, pick your poison of failure recently. We're sealing in there, flailing about the reality of, oh God, these people really are as bad as we thought. And I wouldn't say that you're naive, because I think, if you just logically think through it, it's like, okay, it makes sense. These people are human. They're operating on, information that's getting older and older and out of date to the current situation. It's not a surprise that this is the case, but just to see it in reality is a jarring thing. So I wouldn't say you're surprised. I think you're just a jarring moment for you. And I think that's how I feel about this. And here's the other thing I would tell people to also be prepared for as your next jarring moment. I don't think anybody is really going to get punished heavily for this that's revealed in this report, or anything else for that matter. I think, they'll probably serve up Strzok, because he was the one stupid enough to write down all of these things in an email or a text message to be very obviously used against him. But in terms of like systemic resolution of this, it's not going to happen. The only way that happens is, like I said, if some sort of external force really comes in and forces the change itself. Like I said, that would be by definition a revolutionary action. And that's what you have to kind of think through. It's like, if you want really change, what degree are you willing to put up with the costs of going through a revolutionary activity? And that's the calculus you have to be prepared for.
Yeah. It's the worst part is that nobody's going to walk. Nobody's going to do a perp walk. Nobody. I guess I just need that emotional satisfaction of these fuckers doing a perp walk. Because it's not just the thing of Clinton, right? It's the Iraq War, the complete mismanagement of the economy. It's the endless war in fucking Afghanistan. That's the war that nobody ever talks about. It's still fucking going on. 17 fucking years, and they're still not done with that shit, right? It goes on and on and on. Look, I understand on a rational level what's going on. Okay, this is basically the grandchildren and great-grandchildren of a billionaire. Okay, I've seen this firsthand, of the grandchildren and great-grandchildren of a very, very rich man who squander the fortune left to them, and they arrogantly act as if they had had anything to do with acquiring this great power that they are wielding so casually and cavalierly. But they didn't. They were just born lucky. And that's the thing. And they use military power casually. They don't understand what misery it inflicts. The only one who does is that McCain, whom I hope he rots in hell. I hope he burns, for all eternity, because I truly believe he is an evil man. He is a man who wants money and is willing to be bought in order to and promulgate war in order to get money. I think that he's evil incarnate. I don't care if I get in trouble over it, but I'm sorry. I'm ranting.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree with you. And here's the thing. This is probably why you won't see a perp walk, because the problem that is driving this is so fundamental and systemic. Is that there are not enough jail cells for complicity. You know what I mean? It's like, what was the line from Apocalypse Now? It's like when they're trying to get rid of Walter Kurtz for acting, above and beyond, just means of war. He's like, and I think, what's his face? Martin Sheen says that's like giving away speeding tickets at the Indy 500. Yeah. That kind of mentality. I think that's kind of the situation we're in. Yes, there are certain people whose level of actions are so wrongheaded and so terrible that you want them going down that perp walk. I still frankly want to see all of the Clinton family going down that way. Oh, yeah. But I think definitely part of the matter is the Clintons could always say, like, I fucked up, but not in a way different from everybody around me. And it's almost like, remember in the in the ironically enough, after the Iraq Two, they when they dismissed the entire Iraqi army because they were obviously Saddam's guys, and people were saying, "Dude, you can't get rid of every last guy, because you just create a completely fucked up situation where you have this whole class of people unemployed and ready to go crazy for you against you." And I think that may be the situation here. Was like, if you really were going to hold people's feet to the fire, you're going to basically fire or punish or put in jail everybody in the State Department, as far as I can see, half the leadership of the FBI or more. Same thing with the DOJ, and same thing with the CIA, and probably the Department of Defense, and the banking heads, and if I didn't say the media, I'm going to say the media again. All of them are complicit and fucked up in a similar way.
So we're basically saying that we have to go for full-on revolution. That's what you're saying.
Well, I mean, like I said, I would love there's a certain degree of show trial which is very pleasing.
Yeah.
In this regard, and I think a lot of people stand to account for themselves, but it's so voluminous that I think most people are just be scared by that.
But it's so funny, Bill Clinton made a complete ass of himself. You saw that interview that he did?
Which one? There's been many interviews where I thought he made an ass of himself.
Well, yeah, he was talking with James Patterson and with some interviewer, because he wrote a book with James Patterson, which that's bizarre, but okay, fine. He wrote a novel with James Patterson about like some heroic president, some kind of thriller nonsense like that. And he's being interviewed, and the interviewer asked him about the Me Too movement and Monica Lewinsky and stuff like that. And he's like totally retrograde, and he's like, I didn't do anything. I apologized and all the rest of it. I mean, he was impeached over this shit. He lied, and he should have. In today's world, okay, if he had been like a CEO of a company, he would have gone to jail, just like Harvey Weinstein is going to jail, right?
Right.
But the hypocrisy of the left, this Me Too bullshit. But when it actually counts, when the chips are down, they pussy out. Okay, sorry for the. I didn't mean to do a pun there, but they completely, pussy out. They don't hold the guy's feet to the fire. Will they ever? Because
I certainly believe that Bill pussies out when the chips are down, but that's neither here nor there. Oh, the funny other detail I heard on that one was, I think recently Van Johnson said something to the effect of Bill Clinton's heart was in the right place with regard the Monica Lewinsky stuff or women's movement. I'm like, I don't even know logically what you're saying, Van Johnson, other than to say, you're just giving Clinton a pass. And this is unsurprising, right? I mean, we're human beings are naturally tribalistic. The tribe manifests itself several different ways. And I think this tribe of the liberal do-goodery managerial class of our society it's obviously overstayed its welcome. I think what it's manifesting its dying days, and those dying days could last a long time,
decades,
on the historical chart, but it's dying, right? So
it's not fucking dying fucking fast enough for my taste. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's why I'll be the cold calculating guy here for those people. Like I said, those people who are afraid of any kind of revolutionary activity or the idea of replacing an existing class with another class. I would simply say this: look, they're dying whether you like it or not. And it's a question of how many lost years do you want? How much do you want to go back and rebuild? Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, good point.
Because if you wait for the real collapse to happen, a big one, to the point that I think you're trying to document, it's almost irrecoverable, or at the very least, a very painful recovery. The sooner you resolve the matter, the better it is. It's like, don't just rip the fucking Band-Aid off right now and fix it.
Yeah, my thinking is the Secret History. It's a novel and all that. It's supposed to be exciting and visceral and blah blah blah. But at the same time, it's a serious project in the sense of an actual vision of a socio-political financial crisis and collapse. The ultimate collapse of an empire, and the first truly global empire that's ever existed, and an empire that started with such promise, but like the Roman Empire, just became corrupt corrupt and sick to its soul. I mean, the parallels between Rome and America are just so startling. And there's no question in my mind that 1,000 years from now, the educated people will speak American English as their lingua franca. And it will be like Latin. And I do believe that the North American continent will wind up being broken up, just like Europe was broken up into the different countries that we know of today, all of which originated from Roman provinces, all of which got their language from vernacular Latin. We will have such a thing happen in the North American continent over the next 1,000 years, 2,000 years. The United States will disappear, but the as a political entity, but the culture will remain. It's the second Rome, and we are. I figure that we are at portas to getting our Augustus, our first great emperor. Okay, because Julius Caesar wasn't the first great emperor; it was Augustus. He was the one who was able to consolidate power and make it happen. And, the end of the Republic, that came about because of Julius Caesar. I don't think that Trump is Julius Caesar. I don't think that we're going to have a Julius Caesar figure per se. But I think that it'll be like Augustus sliding into Tiberius kind of thing. That's been my estimation, because I think that you must have read this years ago in Zero Hedge. They had some guy saying, look, America is a turnkey dictatorship, okay? Turnkey totalitarian state, that was the phrase. Turnkey totalitarian state. It had everything to become a totalitarian state with just a few tweaks here and there, and it's done. And I think that the temptation will be too great for subsequent politicians. I think that they will just go for it. They will just go for the brass ring and be out and out totalitarians. And I think it's going to be, well, I'm saying in the novel, I think it's going to be Kirsten Gillibrand in the 2024 election. I think that she's going to win, and starting in 2025, that's it. We're flat out totalitarian.
Yeah, I think it will be a left winger who takes that path, and I think we have been gearing up for the imperial presidency for a long time. It's since Lincoln, essentially, as we've been laying the foundations for this. I also think it would be left wing, because even though people love to think of the right wing takeover of the country, the reality is, and we've seen it, right wingers don't know what they want. They're very reactive, and in our country in particular, lack the balls to do anything like that. So I do think it'll be a left winger, especially in response to the forces like that make Trump possible, right? Because what is the net reality of those forces? It's people who are particularly intelligent on some regard or perceptive of the flaws in the system, pointing them out in such an obvious and dramatic way that more and more people come and agree with them. So what do you use to stop them? Well, you use the power of like social media to control who can talk when and where and why. You use it through the monitoring of all conversations and communications, hence the NSA programs. Go on down the list, they'll have it. It's very well suited for a left-wing vision of social order and engineering. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that the right wing right now has much vision to counteract that.
They have zero vision for that.
Yeah. So that's what I think it will be. And it's unfortunate, because I think that's the worst leadership. I would much rather have Marcus Aurelius than Tiberius, but we're going to get Tiberius.
Oh, yeah. We're going to get Tiberius, and we're going to get secret police and secret prisons. No question. No question in my mind. We're going to have thought crime prisons. Okay. No doubt in my mind. I feel fortunate. On a personal note, I've started to establish my family's fortunes permanently in Ukraine, in terms of acquiring property and such. And it's just, I see that Western Europe is in frank decay, and it will be overrun by Africans. It's obvious, it's happening. Why are we even pretending that it's going to be any different? Western Europe will be overrun by Africans, and they will destroy the culture of Western Europe, just as they destroyed the culture of Rhodesia, currently Zimbabwe, and they are destroying South Africa. They're going to destroy Europe. And if people are going to say, "Oh, you're a racist," well, I don't give a shit. I have to look at the reality, and that's the reality. Okay, and but at least at the Oder-Neisse line, the Eastern European countries, especially Hungary, Romania, the more backward ones, they're not down for this shit. They're not down for the Muslims. They're not down for the Africans. They don't want any part of that, okay? Here in Ukraine, the Africans, the Arabs, they're looked at askance. Because I live in an area close to the University of Kharkov. And because of that, there are a lot of foreign students. Because a lot of well-off Middle Eastern and African students, not many, but they're noticeable, they come here to study. And they are looked at askance. And I don't even speak Russian, and even I can tell, okay? And in a way that they don't look at me, because they look at me as a middle-aged foreigner. I'm fairly well-dressed, fairly educated, and whatever it is about my person, they realize, he's not, he's a good guy, he's going to be okay, and they treat me very, very nicely. But they look askance at the browner people from the Middle East and Africa, and they don't want to have anything to do with those people, okay? Which I think is a blessing. What?
And it's historically based. It was 1,000 years of Poland, Russia, and the Balkans dealing with Muslim invasion. Constant.
Yeah.
Like I said, even to the point of how it was almost like a zombie apocalypse. Like the frontline soldiers of the Muslim invasion were the Janissaries, which were basically stolen European Christians converted to Muslim extremists and used to attack them. So they fundamentally understand how this battle is fought in a way that when they're looking at Western Europe, they think of the people as the most naive, unlettered, uneducated people to think that they can, play this game and come out the better for it.
Yeah.
And I think having that 1,000-year history helps.
Yeah.
In an ironic kind of way.
Yeah. And so with that, I think that we're going to call it a podcast because we've been going on for an hour and change. And so, Dr. Benway, why don't you take us out?
Well, join up for the FBI. Make a difference.
Make a difference. Make a difference. Join the future secret police of America. Okay, that's a happy thought. And so with that, I'm Coach Red Pill, signing off for the Coach and Benway podcast. I hope you will join us next time.
Take care.